Oddworld Strangers Wrath was released on a Nintendo Switch on the 23rd of January, and this seems to be quite a big deal for Oddworld Inhabitants as it's the first Oddworld game released on a Nintendo Switch, with 2 more classic Oddworld titles expected this year. A week after Oddworld Strangers Wrath Switch got released, the Entertainment Software Rating Board gave out a rating for Oddworld Munch's Oddysee HD on the Switch, suggesting but not confirming that this will be the next Oddworld game that gets ported to the Switch. Which then begs the question, what would be the third game that gets ported? And I'd guess it'd be Oddworld New N Tasty, because if you're gonna put Oddworld Abe's Oddysee on the Switch, you'd probably also put Oddworld Abe's Exodus on there as well. Plus New N Tasty is of course the updated canon version of Abe's Oddysee, so it'd make more sense to put that on there instead of the original. That's my theory anyway, but on second thought, is New N Tasty considered a classic Oddworld title? Maybe not. This whole operation is the result of a deal Oddworld Inhabitants has struck with Microids, a company in which some employees were members of GT Interactive and would have worked on the launch of the first Oddworld games, so maybe Abe's Oddysee, or less likely in my opinion Abe's Exodus, are in contention after all. And then Oddworld Soulstorm will probably eventually come out on the Switch as well, I'd imagine, which is again why I think it's less likely to be Exodus. Back to Strangers Wrath though, from what I gather, reviews have been good for this version of the game, and Oddworld Inhabitants founder Lorne Lanning has said that Oddworld Strangers Wrath Switch has ended up being Stranger's best rendering yet, with improved graphical and performance capabilities, which is very good of course. Now something that's very interesting is that I've always found it slightly funny that they haven't ported any of the games to the PS4, as currently you can't play any of the Oddworld games on what is arguably the main console currently out, except Oddworld New N Tasty of course. Well, on Twitter, Lorne Lanning responded to someone asking for Strangers Wrath on the PS4 by putting this. Very intriguing, if I dare say. All these ports that they're releasing should certainly boost Oddworld Inhabitants' cash supply that they can put into making new games, which is a good thing of course in particular for Oddworld Soulstorm, and I think that's why they're doing all these ports. Lorne says it costs a lot of money to make a game, so I think they're getting all these deals done, you know, porting it to the other consoles to sort of boost their budget and ensure that they can make Oddworld Soulstorm the best game that they can. Speaking of which, I saw a tweet the other day from Oddworld Inhabitants confirming that Oddworld Soulstorm is still due to be released this year in 2020. I guess that's not really news, but I thought I'd mention it as it's relatively assuring considering the Oddworld Soulstorm release date changes more frequently than a set of traffic lights. Though it should be noted that it seems they're not aiming for the early 2020 release date that they announced last year, but that was highly likely that they wouldn't anyway, considering that they covered that up about a day after they announced it. I mean, they literally covered it up, so clearly they weren't confident in that anyway, so that's not too much of a letdown arguably. With more Oddworld games coming to the Nintendo Switch in 2020, as well as Oddworld Soulstorm expected to be released this year, 2020 looks set to be a big year in the history of Oddworld Inhabitants.
Hello, follow me.